So Kelly, what are your first impressions of this movie?
I actually thought that I had remembered seeing it, and it was really the Hans Christian Andersen story that I remembered. So my first viewing was just on my television at home. This is so much better. This is really exciting. And I didn't really do any research. I just watched it. I wanted to just see the story and see the dancing, and I loved the way it depicts it's a little bit glorified, but it depicts a dancer's life. You really see some of the background of what a dancer does, the daily class, you know, the dedication and commitment that is necessary to be a professional dancer of that level.
For sure, yeah. Some of the themes I've picked up on this. I've watched it again before the show, but art, love, and obsession.
I love that obsession.
Do you find that it sort of accurately depicts a dancer's life with the obsession intermingled with love and romance and daily life?
Yeah, I think that it's the life of a dancer is really dedicated to honing their craft. They have to train every day. They can't ever stop. A professional dancer generally would rehearse throughout the day. They'd start with a daily class. So that might be 5-6 days a week. Daily morning class is an hour and a half, rehearse all day, and then if there's a performance, they're performing something else in the evenings. And it's just it's a grind. I mean, you can't ever not be training. You can't ever take a break. When they're on the train and he's asking her to come back and put on the red shoes, and he says to her, "And you've been taking class. And you haven't stopped," and she promises that she hasn't stopped, and there's no way she could have jumped back into that role without having continued taking her classes daily.
Now, Maura Shearer, in particular, she was a ballerina. She interrupted her career to do this movie. She at first didn't want to do it because she thought the screenplay was trite, but Michael Powell kept pressing her to do it, and her ballet instructor said, "Go ahead and do it. Just get this guy to stop doing this." Did you notice anything in particular about her performance that seemed accurate or maybe exaggerated for the film? Or the depiction of her joining the ballet, rising through the ranks to become the prima ballerina?
No, I think that's pretty standard. I mean, that's generally how it's done. You don't just become a prima ballerina. You have to work your way up through the corps and earn your place in the company as a prima ballerina. She was very young. She was 21 when the movie was made. So it was a very big deal for her. But she just didn't even know how amazing she was. And she went back to the company and continued performing and didn't really have an interest in doing any movies.
Now the depiction, this is more early on in the film, but when the students come in, we've got the dancing students and the music students, and they're sort of against each other. I don't know much about ballet, but is music and dance, do certain people view one art form superior to the other, and does the blending of ballet, the blending of music and dance in ballet, create sort of a rift between anybody?
Oh, I don't know. I think they're intertwined. They go hand in hand. I don't think that a dancer thinks about dance without music. I mean, there is choreography where there isn't any music, but even when that happens, you're still thinking about the breath and the use of rhythm and flow in your movement anyway, so that it still is musical.
So we have the filmed ballet that takes us away from the reality of what we would actually be seeing if we were watching a staged ballet. I was in my research, a lot of the talk was about how this is the impression of what Vicky is feeling. Doing the ballet is not a realistic portrayal. Martin Scorsese was talking about how he drew inspiration from this film for the scenes in Raging Bull, where Jake LaMotta is in the boxing ring. It's not the reality of what's going on, what you would see. It's the impression through filmmaking. Being a dancer, yourself. Have you experienced anything like this subjectively, where you sort of get lost in your own world while you're doing the ballet? You know, he tells her the music will be playing, and you know through the music, go do it.
Oh, jeez. Any dancers in here who want to comment? When I was performing, I think I always felt lost in the performance. That was, as soon as I started, I became whatever character or whatever emotion was in the dance. That was where I was in that moment, very present, and that was important in my performance, to not be preoccupied with, you know, who was watching or what I thought about how people were receiving it. I had to be in that moment. So I don't know that I ever was in a fantasy, you know, and imagining myself in a different environment. I was just present in that moment. I don't know if that makes sense, but.
So the last real question I have here, and this is heavy, so I'm not expecting an answer. The question I think this film brings up is our art worth dying for?
So, your thoughts?
Yeah, let's open it up to the audience. Anyone questions or comments?
I will say this: if a student approached me and said, and it's happened, says, you know, should I dance? Should I act? And I say, I don't know, should you? I mean, how passionate are you about it? Could you live without it? And if that student says, you know, yeah, I could, then I say, maybe this is not for you. It really has to be something that you're passionate about. You have to be, it requires dedication and focus, and commitment, and you have to give up some things in order to do it and excel at it and be good at it.
Any questions or comments from the audience?
Has it changed at all, though, where the expectation here, and I think there have been other dance movies over the years, that really make that clean line between a career and a life? And do your students, if they go on to, you know, professional careers, still face that choice today?
Somewhat, I think. You know, I know an actress who decided to have a family, and she was happy in that role as a parent, and now her children are getting a little older, and she's struggling with the reality of balancing that responsibility to be the parent and wanting to be an actress and pursuing that. There are conflicts. It requires time to go to rehearsal and be away from your family and all of those things. So I still think there's a balance in it. Did that answer your question? Yeah, I think it's still relevant, yeah.
Looking around, I don't know how many younger people are in the audience, but you noticed that it was over 2 hours long. The first time I saw this, the first 4 times I saw this, this is about the 12th time, I was a youngster, and those were the days where you could just stay in the movie theater and not have to repay. There were 2 movies, a newsreel, and a cartoon. And my cousin and I, who were both dancers, went early in the morning and stayed until 11 o'clock at night. And saw it 4 times in a row.
That would have been me.
Plus the other movie, the cartoon, and the newsreel. But, you know, movies aren't this long anymore. And that was very, very common.
Well, this was the first movie that had an actual ballet segment, you know, this long, beginning, middle, end, which influenced everything that came after it, I think, not just filmmaking, but, you know, it was, my husband said something. He said when this movie came out, he remembers his father asking him if he wanted to go. And he was young, you know, maybe in his early teens, and he said, no way. It's about, you know, girls and dancing. So he had no interest, but I'm sure, I think he would look at it in a whole different way now if he saw it.
This is a bit darker, but I couldn't help but watch the whole thing and think of it through the lens of Me Too and kind of what's going on in the
Yeah.
entertainment industry. I'm just
Yeah.
wondering, as a woman who's obviously in a similar position to him, is there still a gender dynamic, and kind of what you saw with kind of the way he sort of controlled her in a lot of ways and manipulated her? Is that still a problem in the industry?
Generally, I think that there's a hierarchy, and I do think, I mean, male dancers are called boys, and female dancers are referred to as girls. It's not women and men, and I do think there are, I do think there is some of that power control stuff going on still. I think it depends on where maybe those companies are. I want to say that I don't know if this is really based on true fact, but I think when there's a hierarchy, like there is in ballet, the corps, the prima ballerina, that's more apt to happen than, say, like a modern dance company, where there's more equal distribution of roles and men and women dancing together in different ways. Did that?
Sure.
Yeah.
In my research, the director was talking about how at the end of this film they got in trouble from some critics and audiences for killing off Maurice Shear. People claimed it was misogynist and all that, but he couldn't think of another way to end it, and that's how the Hans Christian Andersen story ends. So.
Right. And then something I read about her, really, she shouldn't have been in the red shoes at the beginning of the, right, because she puts them on, right, in the middle of the ballet, but the director just made that choice because he knew it just had to be that way.
The particular shade of the shoes is fascinating. You see them go down the line. How often have you had costuming be that important in a show where the exact shade of a color, it comes down to that?
I've never been in a big company like that, so I mean, costumes are important, but some of that has to do with budget, right? But if you've ever seen, like a tutu is so intricate, and the work that goes into it, and the hours and hours and hours that are made, and they're, the tutus are made so they can fit different dancers, because several dancers might play the same role, and they're very intricately laced and hooked and buttoned, and they are sort of sacred. Also, a ballet slipper, each dancer has a ballet slipper made particularly for their foot. So they're custom made, and a dancer will probably go through one pair of ballet slippers per performance. Yeah. And I know some people think that there's something wooden in the top of the toe, but it's just layers of fabric and a paste, which hardens, and then the dancer actually works the shoe to fit her foot so that she can get up onto the top of the box, so that she can balance and be comfortable in it. But they're not that comfortable, to tell you the truth. I mean, in this way, things have changed. Now they have pads for shoes and toe things. I mean, it's crazy when I see the girls, what they put into their ballet slippers now. When I was dancing, it was a little moleskin, like you just, wrap a blister and put your foot in the shoe and just do it. And so now there's all kinds of, ways to protect their toes and help them get, up on the top of the box better. So all of these great improvements for dancers' feet, which is a good thing. There was a hand up in the back.
I just wonder what the significance of the shoemaker was. Instead of the tempter, was he sort of a devil role, or because he was offering the shoes in the beginning, and then at the end he's offering them to another dancer.
That's what I gathered. I didn't read the Hans Andersen story.
Right.
But you said you remember that.
Well, I did vaguely remember it. But I can't answer that question.
Some antagonistic figure.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
The last time I was in a ballet class, it was introduced to me the idea that there are more than one school of ballet.
True.
Could you let us know what we saw here in this?
Well, she was a dancer with the Ballet Russe.
Hmm.
I read that she studied some Cicchetti. Yeah, the French Cicchetti is French, and then there's an RDA, which is a British Royal RDA, Royal Academy of Dance. Sorry, RDA is a different organization. So I would assume that it was the British technique, the British school. Yeah.
How are they different?
Some of the way that the leg does the beats around the ankle, and some of the arm positions and arm patterns are a little bit different, and the épaulement, the position of the torso, and in relationship to the arms and the legs. Each school has a sort of specific way of training their dancers. There's also Vaganova, which is a Russian syllabus, and so each has its own particulars. And some of the vocabulary might be slightly different, although the movement might be fairly the same. So for instance, in one technique, there's an action of the foot to strengthen the foot, and the dancer would go through the ball of the foot, strike. It's called a frappe. I don't think you can probably see it, but the dancer would go through the ball of the foot, strike the floor, and then stretch the foot. And that is an exercise to strengthen the foot. And in, I think in Cicchetti, the action doesn't ever strike the floor, but they're called the same thing, frappe. And they're both for strengthening, but they're just the mechanics are just a little bit different. So each school has its particular things like that. Mm-hmm.
Well, to show my ignorance, when someone says, let's do a ballet, let's compose a ballet, is it, how do you, the music versus the dancing, do they go together, or do they do music first and then fit the dance to it? How does that usually work?
It's interesting because it can happen most any way. The
Okay.
music can be, the score can be composed as the ballet is being constructed.
Okay.
So it happened together. Sometimes the score happens first and then the choreography is set after.
Right.
So there's no set answer to that. It depends on how you're working.
Okay.
Did that answer it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I know, because it is hard. It seems like one would come before the other, but that's not necessarily true.
My ignorance too, are there still being major new works composed and ballets performed, or is it pretty much the repertoire that's been on stage forever?
No, I think there are always new ballets being created, but I think what pays the bills are the traditional classical ballets that people are familiar with, and I want to see those pay the bills for the new ballets. And the Nutcracker is big for many companies. There's financial stability. Yeah.
Has the Red Shoes ever been performed on stage other than the film?
As I was kind of searching around, I saw several versions, but I don't know. YouTube and but I don't know for sure. They wouldn't have been the same. I mean, they would have been a lengthened version. Did you?
Yeah, in my research, I saw some advertisements for it, but I didn't look when or where. But I didn't see people who were performing it.
Yeah, but they didn't look like they were the same. It looked like it was a version of, an interpretation of the small ballet that we see